Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you're super well. Welcome to the Frazer show. On today's show, I have for you guys a guest of mine, Charisse.
Hello.
Hey. Now, Charisse is a writer, creative consultant, and a DJ. So today we're just gonna chop it up, talk about your story, your journey, and how you got involved with what you're doing today.
Yeah.
So let's start from the very beginning, as early as you possibly can. So you're a writer, you're a DJ, you're a creative consultant. How did everything all start for you?
It was writing. Writing's always been my constant. So I think when I was like 15, I started this blog, and that's where Authentic Duplicate came from, because I came up with that name, and it was just like a blogspot blog that I had, and I would just write about music that I liked. I was really into fashion then, and I thought I wanted to go into fashion journalism, but later I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. But yeah, so I would post outfit pictures of things that I'd put together, and I'd write about other people's designers' clothes and things like that. Just just a little blog that I had, and I'd called it Authentic Duplicate. To me, the whole concept, which has kind of grown and evolved with me over time. But at the beginning, it was just the idea of as much as I am an authentic person in everything that I do, I strive to be authentic, and I'm an individual. I'm also a result of everything that's come before me.
Okay. Yeah.
And also just the fact that for me to be here, there have been people who paved the way, and people who have sort of influenced me. So it's about paying homage to those people and always reminding myself of that sort of history and carrying it in everything that I do.
Okay. Who are sort of some of the people that have influenced you?
I say first my parents. Because I was born in Zimbabwe, but then I came here, I was 3.
Okay.
So even though I haven't lived in Zim for pretty much most of my life, I'm quite grounded in my culture, and kind of understand the traditions. I've been back, so my parents have been responsible for that. And then I'd say in terms of being exposed to loads of different worlds, I say it's my friends, the schools that I've been to. I've kind of lived in different areas and moved around and gone to different schools, schools that are predominantly white, and then been schools that are really monocultural, and then lived in the area that was kind of nobody wants to go there, and then lived in the area where all the rich people live.
So you moved around quite a bit.
Yeah, so
okay.
I think it's just my environment and being an immigrant, being somebody that has to adapt to different situations.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I was born in Jamaica, so
Okay.
so I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Trying to find a spot that you can settle down and just call this place sort of a home sort of thing. Now, you came here when you was 3. I presume you've been back to Zimbabwe quite a few times. Whereabouts in Zimbabwe?
I was born in Harare, but we grew up, I lived in Blue Area for a period of time as well. So,
Okay. So what's it like there? Do you have any recollection of what it like living there at all?
I remember people more so than the actual, but every time that I've gone back, because at the end of the year I'm going to South Africa and to Zimbabwe by myself, because when you go back with family and you're young, you're kind of sheltered. So all I ever saw was you go and visit relatives, and it was just people's houses, but I don't know the country for myself. And then I also didn't go to school there, so I didn't really get that experience either. So in terms of I can tell you more about the people and culture and traditions as opposed to society and life in Zim, because I haven't really experienced it like that. But I just remember that the community is something that I remember vividly, and just that everybody is your parent, your second parent. And
sounds like Jamaica.
So if you go outside, all the kids in the area, and you run around. If you do something, you get in trouble. You can't come home and be Mom, this person told me off about this, because your mom will be why were you doing that sort of thing? So there's always eyes on you, and you can get lost, but you'll figure out your way home because somebody knows your mom or somebody knows. So that's one thing that I remember very vividly, and just the freedom of it. And there wasn't that because now I guess when we moved here, it'd be my mom would be you have to be home at this time, and she's worrying. But in Zimbabwe, there was just a lot more freedom. Because you knew that you were safe, and there wasn't.
When you were 3, then was it Reading you moved to when you came to England, or was it London you moved to?
I think we lived in Slough first.
Okay.
Then from Slough we moved to Reading.
Right.
In Reading we moved it around a little bit, and then I moved out of home to come to London, but my parents still live in Reading.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, let's take it back a little bit to when you actually start journaling and that sort of stuff. You said you started that when you were around about 15 or so. What was sort of inspiring you, or were there any journalists that were inspiring you, or writers that were inspiring you back then to sort of pursue that sort of creative avenue at all?
Yeah. So I used to love this writer. She had a blog at the time. Now she's kind of moved into more self-portrait photography. She still writes essays, but at the time her blog was called Teftopia, and it was also a blog spot. Okay. And I loved her blog because she wrote about music, and she wrote about food, and she took her own photographs, like self-portraits, but also images of like just general like photography that would go with the things that she wrote about. But then she would also write about fashion, and she would integrate all of them. Okay. And they would all kind of, there wasn't like a cutting point. There wasn't, I think what I loved about it was that there was an acknowledgement that everything is linked somehow. And especially when it comes to art, if you're, I don't know, decide to write a book, you need somebody that's going to design the cover. You need, like, everything connects somehow. So she used to be a vessel for all of that. Okay. And I just really, that really excited me because I also had a lot of different interests. And I just loved the way that she wrote. She was a very creative, lyrical writer as well. But then it was still journalistic. And I'm trying to think who else at the time was influenced. Yeah, I think, I used to read a lot of people's fashion blogs and just look at their outfit pictures. So I think for me, it was like a dreaming thing. In terms of the fashion, it was a dreaming thing, like seeing people put together certain outfits. And then for me, like, I couldn't always afford those outfits. So I would try and make it work in my own way. Yeah. So whether it's like making stuff or finding stuff in the charity shop so it was just more about the dreaming aspect. So all the time, like, I used to get frustrated because I'd make these collages of outfits, and it would be like a sort of like what I'm going to wear in spring summer, but it never came about because I could never afford to buy the stuff that I'd made in the thing. So it was all very much dreaming. But then in terms of the writing about music and about life, it was me observing life and finding a way to express myself. And I think for me, I didn't really have many people around me that were doing the things that I was interested in, and then people who like were sort of like in the areas that I dreamed about didn't really look like me or reflected who I was or where I'd come from. So it was just kind of, and then I think also I was always a very observant and analytical child, and so things like in terms of like my parents' relationship, in terms of like the dynamic of us like being immigrants and all of these things, I would just notice and try to make sense of things, and writing became the way that I could. So when I was like, it was quite therapeutic for me. So like frustrations, like anger, happiness, like I would just write it all down because it was like a way of me processing it. So I think that's what it is, like a variety of things. But yeah, that's kind of why I started writing.
Is there sort of because I know sort of some sort of writers, they have sort of an affinity or sort of a love for the written word as opposed to things like video, audio, and that sort of stuff. Is there a sort of something that sort of just gets you more interested in the written word than sort of any other sort of formats, or are you quite versatile in terms of? I mean,
I'm quite that's the thing. Like I think I'm interested in a lot of other ways of telling stories, but the constant has always been writing. Because I studied photography and media in my A levels, and I did photography. I was really passionate about photography for a while, less so now. But I think the reason why I always come back to writing, one, English was always my strongest subject, and I'd always known that from young. Like I was a big reader when I was younger, and I know I was like in primary school, like I was skipped. Like, you know how every year has their books that they read, like the year 1 books, the year 2. So I was like skipped a few stages, and I was reading the books then. Even in then in secondary school, and then I did English. It was just always the subject that I didn't have to put as much effort in because I had like a natural ability for it. So that was the first thing. But then also, one is just the fact that words, especially the written word, is one thing. Like once it's been put down, like it can never fade. Like it carries on through centuries, and people will always be able to refer back to that, and it's cemented. And I feel for me that's when you put thoughts that are in your mind and you put them down on paper, it's like you're affirming them. And then I also just love the art of it. Like I love wordplay. So I think when I first became interested in music, it was hip hop.
Right.
And it was the wordplay and the way that you can manipulate words and say things in different ways and it mean different things, but people can interpret
like double meanings to one sentence or something like that.
Yeah. So it's that the playfulness of it as well. And I think also just language and communication, and it's like you begin to learn different ways to speak to different people and different voices and different tones. And I think when you master that, it opens doors to so many different areas of life. In a way, like, because everybody has to communicate. Everybody has to, like, with photography, somebody can choose to be interested in photography or not. But in terms of like language, everybody has to use that in one way or another. I was actually speaking because recently I've been really passionate, like interested in the power of language as a tool, and how, so for example, like if you work in corporate industries or if you work in an office, there's a certain language that you speak. And if you can't
have you noticed that it varies from different environments? It's like you go up to the city and they speak a certain way, but then you come to somewhere like Southeast and it's like,
it's different.
It's an office, but it's like a different sort of lingo.
So I'm really interested in, like, so for example, like if you're unable to speak the language of a certain environment, you don't get the access to like the resources or the power or the influence that they have.
That's true.
Or the people that are in positions of authority and power, unless you speak their language, they don't take you seriously. And so, but then that education isn't given to everybody. So it's limited to a certain group of people, and that's how they maintain their power. And so that's something that I've been really interested in.
The thing is with language as well, it's deep as well, because it's like there's so many sort of I don't know if nuances would be the word, but there's so many different, like, you could say the same word, or me and you could say the same word, and there could be a third person here, but the way we say it is completely different from how they would say it. So, and they would interpret it a bit different from how we're interpreting it. So I think it's super interesting. So you started off as a journalist. I know you do creative consulting, DJing, and other other stuff as well. So when you first decided that, okay, writing's my passion, it's sort of something I definitely want to pursue a bit further. What was the next step for you? What did you do from there?
So it was that blog, and at the time I lived in Reading, and again there weren't really many people that were doing that. But through social media, London was I developed this like big affinity for London, because all like young black kids that were doing, like, following their dreams and following creative routes on social media, they all seem to be from London.
Right, yeah.
The opportunities were from, like, in London. So, like, then I remember there was this, her name's Akua Apia, and she posted this advert on Twitter about a new magazine that she was starting, and it was called VS Notebook, and they were looking for writers and stuff like that. So I like sent an email. I think I was 16 at that point, because all I wanted, like, at that point was like, I want to go to London. Like, whatever I'm going to do, this, like, what I want to do, nobody here is doing it here. And in this place that I live in, it's like the constant routine. Everything's the same. You go into town, you see the same thing, the same people. Nothing changes. So I was like set on, like, I'm going to London,
the big C.
somehow, somewhere. So I would like save. So anyway, I sent that email to her, and then she was like, read my blog and stuff, and like I was really surprised, because she was like, oh, would you want to be our editorial assistant? And at that time I was like, so I didn't know what it was, like, editorial assistant. So I went on Google, and then I was like, okay, this is what editorial assistant is. You're like underneath the editor, you're working with them, you're responsible for this and this and this. I was like, okay, I can do this. And then like I was like, yeah, I'd love to. So then I started working with them for a while. I was doing the editorial assistant I think I was working with them for about 3 years. And they like, so what I used to do is I'd save up like my lunch money to buy train tickets, or sometimes I just wouldn't pay for a train ticket. And then sometimes like I started working at about 17. So then I was like constantly coming to London. I'd work with them, and like I was writing on this like website that was created, and it grew, and it was really great. And then through that, there's a magazine called Certified UK, which is all about like up and coming artists in the UK. And Nick, who founded that, Nick Asiyama, he sent me a DM on Twitter and was like, hi, would you be interested in writing for us? So I was like, yeah, like for me, I was just very excited, and I was so passionate and so driven, and all I wanted to do was to do this thing that I'd like fallen in love with. And like, so I was working at VS Notebook, editorial assistant, and then I became a writer / journalist at Certified UK. But this is while I was doing my A levels as well. And then I got a job.
So you were busy.
Yeah,
Damn.
I was doing a lot because I was always working in retail at Debenhams at the time.
Yeah.
So that was that, and so I was doing that for a while. So that was the 2 years of A levels. And then, so then it came to the point where I started to think about uni. So then I was like, okay, whatever happens, like I'm going to uni in London. Like I decided that I want to move there. I need to be in the city because I kept going up and down, up and down. And then so many things that I wanted to do, I couldn't do because like obviously with train times, you have to come back. My parents were very like, no, we don't want you there that late, it's not safe. And if I wanted to go on shoots like with people, it's like, I don't want you going there by yourself. And so I was like, okay, I need to go to London because all of these things are here. I've already like built up these connections and stuff like that, but it's hard for me to continue to work with them from here. So most of my unis were London unis.
Right.
To my parents, kind of like, they were like, I don't know if that's a good idea, it's going to be expensive, but anyway. So yeah, then that's when I decided I wanted to do journalism. I felt like that's what I was doing because I'd been working for these two magazines as a journalist, and I was also writing about music and stuff like that. So journalism made sense at the time. So then, yeah, I got into the University of the Arts of London to study journalism, and that's how I moved here.
How old were you then?
So I turned 18 in July, and then I moved in the September. So I was 18, yeah. Okay,
cool. So the first magazine you or the first blog you worked for, that was what was that? The VS Notebook. Do you think that sort of opened, a lot of doors for you? Because you got sort of certified contact you based on your writing from there. So do you think that sort of opened the door for you?
Yeah, definitely. And it was like a really immersive learning experience for me. I was 16, and the two, so it was Akua Appiah and Maiwa. So Maiwa and Akua were running VS Notebook, and I was working with them, and I learned so much from them, especially as like older Black women who were like creative and were strong in themselves, and they kind of taught me about like feminism and just being confident, unapologetic women, and it like just I hadn't had that experience before that. So and they kind of like
it's rare to find that in Reading as well.
Because everyone in Reading, there was like, you wanted to fit in, and if you in Reading was a kind of environment where if you're kind of like go against the grain, you're kind of seen as a bit odd. And I think for me, that spirit, like I struggled to find myself a lot, and I kind of battled kind of with who I am, and I want to be this, but I'm interested in this. And so like moving to London was like a space where I felt like I can really delve into all the aspects of who I want to be and who I'm trying to be. And I met these two women, and they taught me so much, like both directly and indirectly, and really fueled me. I think definitely VS Notebook taught me so much, and it was just also meeting other people who were doing so many different things. And because I was working with them, I also learned about like the process of how to start a magazine, how to like work on emails, and so I used to help them with doing interviews. I helped them in terms of doing branding. So it was just the three of us. So everything was done by the three of us. So it was like a really, really, like for someone at my age to be in a position to learn that much was really, really great.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you went on to from creative writing to DJing and creative consulting as well. What made you do that transition? How did that transition happen? Did you start off as a DJ first, or was it creative consulting you were doing first and then go off into DJing?
I think DJ came first.
Okay.
DJ came first because there was a point, I was doing music journalism for a while. So when I was working at Certified UK and VS Notebook, I used to write a lot about a lot of like artists who were kind of emerging in London, and I was really passionate about it and really passionate about like the growth of like the scene and the sort of whatever.
What sort of artists were you covering then?
So like artists that I wrote about then, like Koji Radical, 808 Inc., Tiny Man, Afronaut Zoo. Like there was like this collective Orf gang that were doing their thing at the time. there were so many people that were kind of like coming up at that time. We've kind of begun, like some have begun to establish themselves, some already have established themselves and gone far.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of like people who were sort of start coming up or had been working for a while and were trying to like take it over to the next level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just used to write about them and their music and really kind of analyze, but also some artists across like overseas as well. With VS Notebook, like I'd write about Kendrick Lamar, Mick Jenkins, and like hip hop artists I was really into, Tiffany Goucher, R&B. So I just everything that I was into. I didn't really have like a limit.
So just for anyone that might be watching this and thinking, okay, I'd love for a magazine to sort of do an article on me or get magazine coverage, how would they go about doing that? Or how, from the other side of it, when you're looking for someone to write about, what do you take into consideration when you're making sort of that decision?
The decision. I think you have, like, so most people, if you're doing it by yourself, so it'd be like writing sort of like a press release per se. So writing a press release, which kind of just includes who you are, like a little description of like your music, like a link, and just like all the information that somebody who wanted to write about you would need,
right? And
then send it to relevant publications or magazines who fit with what you're doing and align with like the type of person that you are and the kind of area that you want to go into. I'd say would be that. But then also I think the more that you kind of grow, you kind of become on people's radars. And so if a journalist is kind of doing their job, like a music journalist is on job and is paying attention and is keeping their ear to the ground, if you kind of, push your music in the right spaces and do like keep growing and keep putting the work in, eventually they
will reach out to you,
see what you're doing, and reach out. But yeah, it doesn't always work like that, just because money needs to be made. So sometimes the talent doesn't really always get the limelight because of the money needing to be made. So but I'd say that is the route. I'd say I'd give advice to anybody who wanted to get featured in blogs and things like that would be create like, and also I think email etiquette is really important because there are a lot of artists who would like send emails with their music, but like they either would like be impolite in their emails, or they would kind of like essential details or essential information miss out. So you kind of show that like they don't send this to the publication keeping in mind what the publication is about. They just sent it blindly. So it's like, for example,
so I think that's important as well, isn't it? Just researching what the publication is actually about before you send it. Because not all publications, hip hop's so broad. Not all publications. For example, if I do trap music, doesn't mean I'm going to get on Underground magazine or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So for example, if it's a hip hop like magazine, don't send an R&B track.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Just that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so you started at Certified, and that got you into DJ. So what was that journey like, that transition?
So it wasn't Certified that got me into DJing, because I'd been writing there for a while, but I'd always been. So I think what happened was like I fell out of like I just got really frustrated with the journalism industry. And I stopped doing.
What was frustrating you?
The music journalism. It was just music journalism specifically kind of got tiresome for me, and it made me fall out of love with the music because, like, I wanted to put on artists who I thought were good. Like, I didn't care about the numbers. I didn't care about how many followers they had. It was like I listened to something and it moved me, and I wanted to write about that. But then it was just, it became frustrating because one, it was like, in terms of like loads of other publications, it was about who got there first. And so, for example, an album would come out today, and on the very same day, 10 reviews have come out. And to me, that doesn't make sense. And you can't have listened to it enough to write in depth.
And then even just listen to it and then sort of being able to absorb what the content, of the album is
really happening. And sometimes you notice new things later on. And it's like, so maybe like you miss something in the first listen and then you catch it in the second. So for me, it's just like, it was really frustrating. And like the whole concept of like writing a review on the day, well, unless it's like you're working for a big publication and they've sent you the album 2 weeks before. But for the most part, I saw a lot of that happening. And so a lot of flippant reviews would be written. And for me, I would really take my time and write in depth and really analyze like every little layer of things that I picked up in the album. And it was just this really like this drive that I had. So I found myself putting all of this time into something that would just kind of like disappear in a day
Right.
because everyone's like moved on
Yeah.
to the next thing, or it's like. And then also, I think with the way that it was worked, so a lot of the publications that I was writing for were like independent publications. So it was like from one hand would certify the kind of process in terms of like it's like artists would pay to get their thing written on the whatever. But then so I was always conflicted with, okay, if this artist doesn't pay, do I now not write about their thing, even though because I think I care maybe not too much, but I really wanted them to be featured.
Yeah.
But they were saying that they weren't going to pay.
Right.
And then I'm stuck in this crossroad of like, okay, I want you to go far and I still want to write about you, but also I need to make money somehow. So it was just that sort of struggle between it being sustainable, but me not losing why I started doing this in the first place. And it kept falling towards the money, and it just got really frustrating for me. So I was just like,
yeah. It's like business and creative, you know. It's that battle between art and commerce, you know. So you left the journalism.
Yeah, so I stopped writing for Certified. I was still doing VS Notebook for a little while. And then when I started, I think when I was getting to my first year of uni, I kind of like fell back on that as well. And then I was just doing uni. And then I think in my, like fast forward, like several like things, but in my third year of uni or second year, I met a woman called Lauren Platt, and she runs a night called Work It, and has done a lot. So she's doing artist management at the moment. She's like an artist as well. She's directing videos and things like that. So, but she's been running a night called Work It for 10 years, and she went to my uni, LCC, and I met her. She does a show on NTS Radio as well. So I met her when I was, because my boyfriend works at NTS Radio, and we'd gone to Gillett Square to interview him, and then she happened to be there. And then we kind of just met and connected, and she happened to be doing a project at my uni, which was like about trying to form a collective and help this collective of young creators bridge the gap between university and the industry. So because she felt like when she was in uni, she struggled to bridge that gap and had to do everything by herself. So for her, it was like a thing of giving back and helping people in the way that she would have had that sort of like help. So then, we like met. She was like, "We're meeting this Thursday. Come." So me and my friend went, and then like it was a group of us, like some from my uni, some not, and then like some DJ, some are musicians, some like are graphic designers. It was just like a mix of people, and then we formed this idea. Like the name was going to be Connect To, and it was about connecting and sort of bringing all of our individual networks together. And so then she DJs as well. So she took us to Boiler Room Studio and like taught us how to DJ. And then she took us around and kind of, so that was my first time ever. Like I'd always wanted to DJ. Like it was something that I'd written as a goal in my diary, but I never had the access or the resource to do it. So like meeting her was kind of like my first, like the gateway for me to sort of get into it. So we would.
Where did you meet her then? Was that when you were at uni in London?
Yeah.
When you met her?
So this was last year.
Okay.
So then what the idea was, like we started putting on nights. So Connect To, the first event that we did was at Corsica Studios, and it was called Game Over. And I DJ'd. We all DJ'd at that night. So that was my first time ever playing out. And so we did 3 nights. One at Corsica Studios, one at Boiler Room Studio in Hoxton, and the third one we did at my uni. And so I DJ'd at all 3 of those nights. And that was the first time, like, that was my, like, DJing out. It was the nights that we'd put on.
What was that like then for you to be?
It was great. Like, we were all, me and my best friend Danica, like, we were just so excited. It was just really exciting. And it was like, okay, this is all the stuff that we've been wanting to do. And it's right here. It's happening. We're putting, like, and then when we put on the event and you're in the space and you're like, whoa, like, we did this. In Corsica Studios, and I was like, is this real? Like, okay, this is actually happening. So it was really exciting and it was really motivating, and like it just kind of was like cemented like that our dreams were possible, and it
that
was
you
like,
can do anything.
Yeah,
basically.
that this can happen. Like we can really do this. So like with music, I guess most people's like first entry point is like their family. So my dad played a lot of like, he loved R&B, like Joe, R. Kelly. And then he also played a lot of Zimbabwe music. So like Oliver Mtukudzi, or I'll say that in like an English accent, but Mapfumo, a lot of people that him, and then, but my dad also loved reggae as well, so he played a lot of Barrington Levi, but then also like a lot of South African music, like a group called Pitch Black Afro, because my dad like was also really into music and had friends that would always like burn CDs for him. But then my mum was more she was very much R&B, like she loved Alicia Keys, Neo, Whitney Houston, and then she loved like South African gospel. So like, there's an artist called Lundi, and like Brenda Fassie, like those kind of people were people that my mum loved. So that was kind of me. But then I guess growing up I listened to a lot of pop and what everybody else listened to. Came to about like the age of 16, I fell in love with hip hop, like I mentioned earlier. So I guess I have always had quite an eclectic taste. And again, like I was saying before, like I've lived in different environments and been around different types of people. So that's exposed me to a lot of different types of music, and I can appreciate a lot of different types. So when I started DJing, I didn't really have a sound per se. It was more just I'd play for the mood, because I had enough music for like any particular group of people that I could play for like whatever that mood. So if it was like an R&B party, if it was like more hip hop, I would play Afro beats and dancehall. So like I've been trying to figure out what is going to make me distinct as a DJ, and what is unique about me. Why do you want me to come and play at your night, sort of thing? So I figured that I guess in everything, the only original thing anybody ever has is themselves. Everything else has been done before. So trying to decide, okay, who am I and how do I tell that story through music? And then, so when I think about me growing up in the UK and being born in Zimbabwe, and a lot of my family living in South Africa, a lot of my mum's side of the family is South African as well. So I found like this, like UK funky and a lot of South African house are very similar. Like the tempos, the beats, the like drum patterns are all very similar. And I just like, I felt like I can mix those really well. And then I found that, then I could play like garage into that and kind of go into that. Then with garage, I can sort of play R&B alongside that. So I've kind of found this like sort of harmony between UK funky, South African house, South African gospel, and Afrobeats, R&B. And then Kwaito, which is like another South African genre, is kind of, I guess, inspired by hip hop, but it still has like the South African rhythm. And I'd say, you know, like West Coast hip hop and how it's like kind of laid back like you like kind of you're like kind of like whatever. That's Kwaito, like it's very laid back and just like that kind of groove. So I think that's like so when I played at Ace, that's the first time I've really kind of been able to go into that spectrum, because the kind of parties I was playing at before were kind of parties where people just want to hear what they know, people want to dance and they want R&B classics, and to kind of, you can go a bit out but not too far out. So for the Zimbabwean music, for example, like South African music is really like becoming very prevalent, especially here in the UK. Like a lot of people are loving South African house at the moment. So you can play that a lot more now and people will hear that and will dance to that. But then when you play the sort of less popular genres or the Afrobeat or like unless it's like you're playing to people who have an open ear, like it doesn't really work. So this Ace gig kind of was like the stepping stone into this realm that I want to go into, of playing for people who were listeners as well as just like party goers. That's kind of where I'm at, and just solidifying that.
So you're still in the process of trying to find your unique style, or you've just about found it?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm really tapping into it, like I'm close, like I'm about to get it. But because I've only just because it's more like in terms of my own head, but in terms of like having played consistently out with that sound, I haven't done it yet. So it's only that one gig. So the more that I do, and the more that I see how people respond to it, and the more I can, because with the mixes that I've done, I always start with like a concept. And so like in the bio, I will write like the sort of story that I was trying to tell, or the thing I was trying to figure out through that. So I think at the moment it's like when I'm playing out, I'm exploring and I'm testing the waters. And I think the more of that exploring that I do, the more I will get to a point where I really hone in. But then it's always going to be like an evolving thing, but kind of more strong in what I'm doing.
Awesome. Now, you've also been doing a lot of creative consulting work as well.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that, like what that is and what you've done. in that space?
Well, when I started creative consulting, I didn't know it was consulting. It started in my uni because when I was at uni, second year of uni, I worked for an organization called Shades of Noir.
Right.
And Shades of Noir is all about sort of implementing diversity and equality into arts education. So it's based within my university, funded by my university, but it's independent.
Right.
So we did a lot, like we did, they put on events which had different themes, like feminisms, decoding masculinity, looking at mental health, and sort of creative ways of healing and things like that. So there was always a theme. So for every event that we'd organise for that, we'd also create a zine for it,
right,
which would be like an informative, educational zine. So we'd write for that, source like artists and other writers and stuff like that, and then also write for the online blog. So what happened, in a way, for many other universities, Shades of Noir has kind of played the role of a consulting role in terms of like a lot of universities in the UK have issues with attainment, like for black and monophic minorities. I don't like the BAME term, but it works for what I'm trying to say. So they have a lot of issues with sort of the attainment gap. They have a lot of issues with the lack of diversity, and they have so all of these things. So Shades of Noir kind of comes in and acts as a vessel to like break down these issues. And a lot of it is kind of like people talk about like decolonizing. So Shades of Noir will come in and sort of like, there's like a term like decolonizing the curriculum and making the curriculum inclusive. So there's a consulting sort of role that Shades of Noir played in that, in terms of like, so they've done events at Ravensbourne, at the Royal College of Arts, at Kingston Uni. So through that, so then what we used to end up doing is like we'd go to meetings with like the heads of my uni, and like different departments would end up kind of reaching out to Shades of Noir and to us as the students who work for Shades of Noir and run Shades of Noir, and be like, okay, like what do you think like is needed here, or we're trying to engage with the students in this way but we don't know how. And so Aisha Richards, who founded Shades of Noir, was like an amazing mentor, another woman I learned so much from, and it's been a big part of like my growth. And so she always used to say like, your opinions and your thoughts are valuable, don't give them away for free, because what would happen is like a lot of the time ideas would get poached, because we had this valuable information that the people who were in jobs, like they're paid to engage with students, were failing to engage. So they come and ask us, we'd give them the information, they'd use it and then go off, but we didn't benefit anything from it. So it became like, so it's like at the end of the day, if you can see that the people who were giving you this information, just put them in a place where they can have that influence, that they can play that role. So that's what Aisha was always used to instill in us, like, you know, you are valuable, and these things that you have to say change things, and they influence things, and you need to think along those lines. So that's kind of when I started thinking in that strategic sense, and looking at my opinions as more than just like throwaway things, but more just like I can implement them and make something out of them. I can put them into a strategy. I can help people to engage. I can help people to get an insight into my experience if they're not from that experience, sort of thing. So that was what I started doing with Shades of Noir, and then doing a lot more in other departments in my uni. So then now I'm working with Team Catford. With Team Catford, my role has kind of been in engaging with young people. So basically the areas that I'm passionate about, so like with working with Shades of Noir was about inclusivity and diversity, and making sure that there are equal opportunities for everyone, especially, and for me, obviously, as a young black woman, that's kind of like my experience. And then also like I studied art, and art has been what has kind of given me so many opportunities and opened doors for me, and allowed me, kind of put me in a place where I'm able to change my life and rewrite, I guess, what the odds were supposed to be, sort of thing.
Create your own rules.
Create my own rules and create spaces and empower myself in instances where I don't have to rely on a organization or another authority to empower me, but I now know the methods and the skills that I need to be able to empower myself and that sort of thing. And just what it's like to live somewhere where the resource to achieve the certain things that you want to achieve aren't there, and so like how much harder it makes it, sort of thing. So those are the areas that I'm really passionate about, and just speaking for and by, and not being spoken for. And I think a lot of time as young people we're spoken for, and people don't take us seriously and don't acknowledge us as people who are able to think and
sometimes
think for
don't
ourselves.
even take our views into consideration, right?
So, or even bother to ask. So it's like an issue, like for example at my university is where I first noticed that was a problem, because they put on events and then for like the students, and then none of the students would turn up, and then they'd be like, okay, why aren't the students turning up? And it's like, one, you didn't ask the students what they wanted, and two, you didn't involve them in putting on these events. And so it's like, it's just, of course they're not turning up because it's not engaging with them, it's not interesting us. So that's the one area that I was really interested in. And also just like, I guess working with Shades of Noir, like I had the opportunity to like speak at conferences and do things like that. And every time, so the biggest one I did was I went to Canada to speak at a conference which is about diversity, and I was the only young person in the room. And then like it was all teachers and like PhD students and tutors and professors who were speaking about like their students and what their students need. Like some of them, that was like their topic in their area. And I'm listening as a student, and I'm like, some of you haven't asked your students, you've spoken for and assumed, and they're like making like snide like jokes. And so I think I wrote an article about what it means to be young and be socially aware, but to be like kind of dismissed with things like, oh, you haven't like grown yet, or just wait and see, when you like, because of the way that I'm doing things is redefining like what is normal. So like with my parents, that was an issue I always had, where it's like, I want to do music and I want to write and I want to DJ and I can do it all. I don't have to, and I don't have to follow science. I don't have to be a doctor. And I'm in a space where the resources for me to do that are there. But you're not listened to until you get to a point where you've proven something. So
by then it's too late, because now it's like you've got enough sort of knowledge and experience to sort of make your own sort of judgments and that. So talk to me about authentic duplicate. What's that? How did that all come about?
So yeah, authentic duplicate is like that was the name that I came up with when I did that blog spot that I mentioned earlier, and I started that. And now for me, it's just continuously evolved as I've grown as a person, as I've learned new things, as I've kind of, my philosophies have kind of broadened, because essentially it is a philosophy, like just that idea of like there not being anything new under the sun, and kind of acknowledging the fact that the past is always with you and you can't move forward if you don't know what came before. So that it's like a philosophy. And I guess I was 15 and having these ideas, but as I've gotten older, like I'm now more informed in that. So the depth is a lot more. So I've read a lot more. I understand my history a lot more. I understand like the present a lot more. And so the depth kind of gets deeper each and every time. So, and the reason why I've stuck with it is it just constantly reminds me of where I started. And that's something that I never want to lose. No matter how far I go with what I'm doing, I don't want to forget why I started it in the first place. And forget that, like I said earlier, that history that has informed me and paved the way for me. And I think in the future, where I want to move with authentic duplicate is actually it being like its own entity in which everything that I do comes from that.
Okay.
So if I'm
like an extension of your personal brand.
Yeah.
Would you say?
So if I'm growing into, if I've like kind of stepped into this world of like creative consultancy, so if I'm growing further into that, authentic duplicate becomes the company where the brands, the organizations, the businesses will come to authentic duplicate for that consultancy sort of thing. And that ethos is the ethos that I will use in all of like the whatever I come up with for that particular issue, because it's problem solving to a certain extent. So yeah, it will kind of draw from the past, the present, in terms of like how to move forward in the future. So that's kind of what I want it to be. Yeah.
So what's the future plan then? I mean, what do you sort of in the next 5 to 10 years, what are your goals? What are your plans? And what would you ideally like to achieve?
Yeah. Well, I've just finished uni, so my main now goal is to stabilize myself, and I'm living in this city which is really expensive. So it's just about finding a work-life balance and being able to pay rent and still being able to and not be surviving and kind of I want to be able to at least like be earning
Thriving,
something that I can.
right?
Yeah, I want to be able to save.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I want to be able to like put money towards something, invest in things, and not constantly be like, if I don't get paid this month, it's over. Like everything's done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like figuring out, okay, it's like, oh, I haven't been like, what's gonna. So yeah, that's like my now goal. Is it's like I just need to, even if it is month to month, at least I have a certainty. Like I have a, stability. That's what I'm trying to work towards. And then just developing the three main things that I'm doing at the moment. So I was saying earlier that I've realized that I'm not a journalist. After this 3-year degree, I'm a writer, and I now understand the difference between the two. And so I'm kind of in a space now where I'm transitioning and evolving into the practice of being a writer. I can still do journalism within that, but I'm kind of moving into what it is to be a writer, so creative writing, literature, short stories, that sort of thing. So I'm DJing, I'm trying to continue to get more gigs and practice and just become a better DJ. So I'm constantly listening to new music, I'm going out to new places. And then in terms of my creative consultancy at the moment, Team Catford is kind of for at least like the rest of the year is something that I'm going to be doing, something that I will continue to be passionate about even after I've kind of like stopped working with Team Catford and this project has kind of reached its end for me. But I want to continue, I want to take this model that I've created, this young and vocal. I feel like there's a lot more that it can do in many different spaces. It doesn't just have to be like for a council trying to connect with its young people during regeneration, but just that concept of being young and being heard and being part of the change that's going to affect you in the future. So that's like something that I really want to do. But I think overall, like I'm very aware of like the path that I've chosen to go down is one that will continue to like change, evolve, and shift
as you evolve,
as I evolve,
yeah,
and
of course.
just like how I got into DJing, I didn't plan for that per se, but it happened, and I'm very open to that. And yeah, so just following suit with what I've been doing, but just growing it and learning and growing, expanding. That's like my goal. But I guess maybe like in terms of more solid goals, like I'd love to own property. That would be great. I want to travel a lot more. I want to be able to afford to travel a lot more, and really like and see the world and document that and incorporate those experiences into the work that I'm doing. And I want to finish a book. That I've been writing a book for a while, and I want to be an author. Yeah.
So a lot of goals. A lot of goals.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right, Charisse, thank you so much, man, for coming down, for sharing your deep knowledge and experience with my audience. Guys, please follow her. What's your handle? What's your social media?
Charisse with 2 E's and a C on everything. Just Charisse C, yeah.
Across Instagram,
Twitter. That's kind of pretty much what I use. Okay. My Facebook, I don't really use it very much. So Instagram and Twitter would be the two.
I'm going to link it up, guys. Please follow her. She's awesome. She's a DJ, creative consultant, and a writer. You definitely want to follow her. Charisse, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Please follow me as well, guys. Sean_Frazer. That's Sean_Frazer. Thank you for giving me your time today. Charisse, thank you once again. Thank you, guys. See you again soon. Goodbye for now. Goodbye. Woo.
Yay.